which means if you're all happy to start right now, I am. So just gonna start right now.
Yeah, I love not having to think. It's great.
Yeah, it's the best. I love not having to think. And speaking of not having to think, hello, I'm Chris Slight, and we are here in the Summer of Strange Scaffold. And what are we talking about? We're talking about 6 games that were made over 2 years. It's not even technically, it is 7, but one of them is in a building in Texas, and the building is called Meow Wolf, and I forget which Meow Wolf it is. Is it the Vortex one?
Meow Wolf, Houston.
Houston, there you go. Meow Wolf, Houston. We got one in there, but the 6 games we're talking about today are with this group of people that we have here. I'm going to introduce all of you because I want to get through all of your titles and all of the things you have. Xalavir is nice and easy. You all know Xalavir. He's the studio head and the font from which all of the video game ideas come from. And most of the time the funding and all of that good stuff. So Xalavir, nice and easy tick. Candace, however, you may know, again from the podcast, but lead producer on El Paso Elsewhere, lead producer on Life Eater, lead producer on Click Holding, studio producer from I Am Your Beast onwards, and lead producer on Co-op Kaiju Horror Cooking, which you will, by the time you're watching this video, you can play it right now. It's in a beta that you can play right now, so you can check it out and find all the bugs and whatnot. So, yeah, right now, play test it, do it. Colin, who is the content designer, or was the content designer for Bass Reeves Can't Die, content designer for Life Eater, co-lead for River Heights Mall Gene Splicer 3000, which I know you specifically wanted to get a mention in here because we don't talk about that enough, to be fair. So I think we should at some point.
It's not a commercial game. People can't download it. It's tough.
Yeah, is that
it
another
existed,
Meow Wolf one?
and it was really good. That was the second Meow Wolf game we worked on together because that was the other first one was Dream Father Loves You.
Yes. And if you want to know more about that, Noodle's got a video for you.
Let's talk about the Oblivion Wheel.
Noodle's got a video for that.
Noodle does have a video for that. It's like the apps. Anyway, also co-lead for Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3 and level design for some upcoming games we haven't announced yet that we may at the end of this series of videos because you don't know about them right now at the time that you're watching them. We are actually missing Dan Pierce as well, I've just realized, because I've got through to my introductions to introduce Dan Pierce, who is not here. So I will tag Dan Pierce in a second as well and let them know that they should also be here. But don't worry about that because Judy's here, the key artist for Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator, background artist on Life Eater, lead background artist on Creepy Redneck Dinosaur Mansion 3, and concept artist on another game that we haven't announced yet. Manda is here, executive producer and writer on a game we haven't announced yet, executive producer and writer on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tactical Takedown. Try fitting that into 140 characters. Lead producer on Bass Reeves Can't Die, and lead producer on Sunshine Shuffle, a game that's not as represented as much here today, so I'm glad it is. Romero, lead programmer, El Paso Elsewhere, programmer, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tactical Takedown, and programmer Co-op Kaiju Horror Cooking. And joining us soon, I'm going to put their introduction up front because I really wanted to get everyone's credits in right at the top. Dimitri, not here right now, will be. I'll put them in somewhere in the edit, so as if they were the whole time. Environment artist and animator on I Am Your Beast, 3D character artist on Co-op Kaiju Horror Cooking, and a 3D artist on a game we have not announced yet. The reason I say all these credits right at the top is to really hammer home, I think, a point that we want to hammer home, and we have been trying to hammer home for quite a while, in that there is an outer perception that Strange Scaffold is Xalavir. I've even seen videos from, like, Giant Bomb and places like that. I think it was an I Am Your Beast video where they were like, and it's all made by this one guy, Xalavir. And I was like, well, that would be amazing if one guy, Xalavir, made all of this.
Pays a lot of people about it.
But yeah, I think Yahtzee had a thing, too, where he was talking about El Paso Elsewhere, and he was like, it's a game written by Xalavir Nelson Jr., directed by Xalavir Nelson Jr., voice acted by Xalavir Nelson Jr., and it's like, well, that is all true. but
It is, but and
Yeah.
it's not to anyone's detriment. You know, the most public facing person for the company for at least the first bunch of years was always Xalavir, but it's something we wanted to address in these videos. And speaking of games, the first one we're going to talk about is Life Eater, because that was the first one. We did a bunch of games over 2 years, and Life Eater was the first one. I want to start with you, Xalavir, because Life Eater, it's a game about a man who believes he must kidnap and sacrifice people for their god, Zimforth. I played a little bit of each game today, actually, to remind myself of each one. So jumped right into all of them. I'd say it's probably one of the darkest games we're going to talk about today. And where did the idea for that come from, Xalavir? That makes it sound like it's a rebuke more than a question. But where did the idea?
How dare you come
You
up with this
sicko.
stuff?
Why did you do that? No, but from its inception, I kind of want to talk about where we started, and then other people. Feel free to chime in. If you were involved on the project, feel free to chime in. If you were not involved on the project and just want to ask questions, also feel free to chime in. So, beginning with you, Xalavir, what was the inception of Life Eater?
So to even go before that and talk a little bit about where the studio is at, I've been very public all along, even back to Dog Airport game, that like, hey, it's me and this guy Tom Vanita. There is an auteur vision and a directorial voice, but the games don't exist without other people. And one of the things that excites me about games is that other people, when empowered and enabled, make what is a cool idea into something that's real and into something that's better than the sum of its parts. And Life Eater is a great example of that in multiple regards. There's several interesting takes on its systems and on the content that folks like Colin brought in and said, hey, let's adjust it this way, and the entire experience escalates into more of what the vision of that game could have and should have been. The story of that game and sort of the setup, it kicked off our partnership with Frosty Pop. Was I had been thinking for a while about I love considering a game design and a production condition at the same time. That's my entire deal. And I had come up with this concept of a horror kidnapping sim. The idea of when compared to when I was a kid, when people said, "Don't put your name on the internet, don't put your real age. What are you doing? Your birthday, that's linked to your banking information, all this other different stuff." And now people just post that stuff constantly. It's my birthday. I am at the Golden Gate tap room for the next 2.5 hours, at which point I will move to a third location. Like, there's all of these ways that people are very vulnerable and exposed in the modern day information environment that struck me as a space for doing an interesting horror game narrative and mechanical foundation, because the question it's asking is, if someone isn't following the inherent social contract of cool, continue to swipe, if someone wants to use that for malicious purposes, how does that transform the way you look at your daily life and what you post and how you comport yourself? And I came up with this context for that. I realized that, among other things, if we kept it at being a horror kidnapping sim, it would seem abominable.
Yeah.
But if you just suggest there's a Lovecraftian eldritch entity, people are like, "Oh, it's fantasy. This is chill and normal for a video game." Actually, a few years ago, I had a conversation with someone who was very, very high up at a platform, and I was bemoaning some of the stories that we can't tell in games. And he said, if you put elves in it or you put it in space, you can just still do that. And at the time, I interpreted that as a kind of like a puzzle to unravel of like, okay, we'll put it in space. What does that mean? The space in which we exist? No, it's just literally games will let you do almost anything as long as you say, it's not about racism. It's about dwarves. It's about elves. It's in space. And so I threw in this Lovecraftian eldritch context. and suddenly found that when I soft pitched people on this thing that I was planning to make, if El Paso Elsewhere, which was the game development at the time, had gone down and I couldn't really make games anymore, the next thing I would try to slowly build together that was really tightly constructed. Suddenly people started reacting way cooler and being way more chill about things. Because actually, there's a guy called Zimforth, and maybe he's serving that. I'm like, yeah, this isn't about real life at all. And I was talking to Faisal, who I was working with at the time. He was one of the people I contracted with in my mad dash to pay everybody who was working at the studio when we weren't getting funding. And I was just talking to him as a coworker and saying, you know, there's this game I'm planning to make after El Paso, where no one would ever fund it. But this is the thing I'd make, and no one would need to fund it because it's so small. And he kind of blinked twice in the meeting and said, well, I would fund it. And now we've worked together on a bunch of games. So that's a lot of background and context for what is still one of my favorite game stories and mechanical swings we took. And one of the few times we've ever legitimately kind of broken new mechanical ground to make what's basically a new genre, which I hope to never do again. When you make a new genre, here's the lie. Here's the deception. You think when you take a little bit from this, and it's a little bit of this and a little bit of this, that all the things have established prior precedent. No, when you pull in enough things, it's just a new thing. You're just doing a new thing. Or the thing you have is confused. And turns out we were doing a new thing, and we had to figure out a bunch of new problems at high speed, which, again, folks like Colin really, really helped us do.
I was gonna say, yeah, like Colin, you were involved in this game, but like Candace, were you brought on as the producer right at this point? Like, or when did you come in? Because I'm just hearing the challenges from a production standpoint before we even get into the game development. Like, when did you come in on the game?
This was a chaotic bring on in a way that I didn't realize it was until afterwards.
There's a few stories like that, but carry on.
Because
you look
the
back.
delightful thing that happened was we did the post-mortem for El Paso Elsewhere, and then Zolivir DM'd me and said, hey, do you want to produce Life Eater? That same day.
Oh, it's a big day.
And you had never heard the term Life Eater before then?
I don't think so.
We were getting more organized over time. That
Look,
It is.
you have
it's
to
been a
start
process.
somewhere.
Before, we would start projects and not have producers attached, so there was at least an improvement.
Here we
Yeah.
go.
Ah, yes, I remember those days.
Just
So
be
it
making
was
Someone
very
would come
much
in and be
a
like,
moment.
Fine.
It was very much a moment of going like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And then kind of going, wait, we have to figure out a lot of things very quickly. Which, like, don't get me wrong. Again, I'm coming from a theater background. That's a lot of what I end up doing in my life. Is it's like, all right, cool, we're doing this event for 400 people. We don't have a venue or any microphones, and I'm like, great, let's go figure out how we can get both of those things really fast. So it's doable, but it's definitely something that I'm glad that we have built structures around to support folks in production in spinning up now. But yeah, it was a lot of going, all right, who's free? Let's put this person on the, yeah, great. Okay, let's go. Go. Hitting the ground running in every sense of that word.
Yeah.
Phrase.
And Colin, I'm guessing you were one of the people that were free, or were you in there from the beginning? Like, where
Was
did
not
you come
there
in?
from the beginning. So I actually have a date here, which is
Dimitri, yeah.
it's Dimitri. Hi, Dimitri.
Hi, Dimitri.
Hello. Can you all hear me?
We're already going.
Yes.
But welcome.
Great.
We're on
Bye,
Life
guys.
Hi,
Eater,
thanks.
so we're not too far in. You were saying, Colin, go on.
Yes. So Zalivir sends me a message on February 7th, 2024, saying, you have any Unreal experience? for where we were at, so Bass Reeves had been canceled somewhat earlier. I don't quite remember when that happened. The timeline will not stick in my brain.
It's October, November
Okay,
of
and
the
then
previous.
at this point, we had worked out some pitches for the Meow Wolf game. Amanda and I had both been laid off from Hack Check in December, so this was kind of my only thing at the moment. And so, I was like, okay, I'll work on this Meow Wolf project and that'll be fine. And then Zalavier says like, oh, well, I've got this. Do you have any Unreal experience? And it was like, kind of, sort of. But all I needed to do was like mess around with data tables and do content design. And from the like small amount that I had done on Bass Reeves, Zalavier was confident I could do it. So I was like, okay, if I'm sure I could figure that out. And so the structure of the game had kind of already been built, but there was just not a lot of content for it, and because it was a new genre, new style of game, there wasn't a precedent for it. So it was a back and forth of me asking engineering for like, hey, can I do this? This doesn't work. I want to be able to do this, and then just building out new levels and kind of pushing the systems in directions that they weren't supposed to go.
I remember when you came in, how much of it was almost delivered to you as, this is a super simple job, just do some data tables. And that job just massively expanded into a bunch of things, like you figuring out from first principles what, not even what our systems did, but just like what the game could be in the fundamental gameplay layer.
So there was this, like, there were a couple puzzles. I think the first two puzzles in the game, levels 1 and 2, which are like the very basic, like, here's how you kidnap somebody, here's how you kidnap one of two people or two people in a whatever. And so those existed, and they used what we sort of had this, like, we had two modes of building puzzles. We had either you could specify like, this is what the person does in the morning, this is what they do in the afternoon, these are the time and days they would work, and then it would populate the entire schedule based off of like parameters you set. And then there was do it by hand, which was like every single individual block was a thing in a data table that would happen at this time, and you would have to set all of those correctly and then go into the person's actual timeline and make those events load up. And then if you missed anything, everything would look horrendous, so you'd have to go back and adjust and make sure that you had exactly 24 hours accounted for each day. So it was a lot of jumping back and forth between data tables, and I was like, I'm making my puzzles like that. Fuck you. So I designed the most complicated levels in that game first, levels 5 and 9, which involve the like older person in like a vegetative state where you have to like stalk his caretakers to find out the only single time on the entire timeline for the week that you can kill him. And then there's the house of 4 roommates where you have to kill someone with like a specific condition. I think you have to kill the siblings that are related. So it's like looking through these people's social lives and basically finding out who's not fucking each other to determine who is related. And unlike Zalavier, I didn't have like the separation of like, oh, well, this is a cosmic entity. It's like, no, I'm designing the kidnapping. And so I just had to think so I had to think like, what's the worst way for a person to discover these? What is like what are the bigger violations that I can think of to really invade someone's personal life in space? And how can I make that fun?
And one of the really important things to bring up for this is, like, I wrote the wider game story, but all of this storytelling and the puzzles, so the puzzles and the storytelling that went into them, those were generated by you, Colin. You would come to me and say, hey, I'm going to do this messed up thing. And I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Well,
or here's a note. Otherwise, fuck up someone's day.
Yeah, because it was very much Life Eater has this like overarching story that is all you, and then the individual moments of gameplay are kind of all me just trying to mess with the player and constantly subvert expectations about what they're supposed to do at any given puzzle, or figure out at least how like a maybe less important or less interesting level, which the latter ones ended up being like, okay, I can't hand design 7 more of these because it takes me like a week and a half to do, and we've got like a month and a half to get this game out. and so I ended up trying to think of clever ways to use the more like generative ones by being like, okay, I can shove events that can only happen at specific times into their schedules, which will still force some semblance of looking hand authored because that thing is always there consistently. So I sort of ended up with a hybrid approach for the rest of the puzzles in the game, where most of it was like, oh, the filler doesn't really matter, but there are a couple important events on each timeline that you can use to piece the puzzle together. But when you have like almost no information from the start, that's really not very visible unless you're my wife, who solved one of those levels in like 2 steps after just looking at the pattern and being like, oh, it's this one. So
I also
my wife is smarter than me. It's natural.
Same. I have the same thing, especially with puzzles where it's like, just do this, this, and this. And you're like, oh. I thought it was
You were saying
perfect.
Candace.
Yeah, but
I
Candace.
forgot that I wrote for this game too. I forgot all
Yes.
about it.
Deliberately
lot of-
or
No,
Did you?
there's a lot going on at the studio. We put out like a lot of games. I don't know if you noticed.
Well, yeah, I'd heard.
But yeah, I like freeform wrote some excessively long lists of like, what are things that a human being could do in a day? And then I sent them to Zalavir and he went, that's a lot of things. What?
I had forgotten about that, but that was actually maybe one of the most useful parts of the process. Was like, I was trying to think of like what people could do at an individual moment, and then I just get this big list of like, oh yeah, Candace thought of that, and I was like, oh, okay, thank God. I like, it was basically like all of the filler had just been written for me, and I got to focus on telling my fucked up little stories, and it was a very, very appreciated part
And it
of
was
that
human
process.
written filler, and that's what made it meaningful, because you could
Yes.
see, because I think Candace is one of the best writing riffers, if not the best one I've ever seen, because you'll see in the giant list in the spreadsheet, like Candace would like hook onto a thing of like school, and then would like come up with like 10 things related to a school, or because what Candace's explicit job in a lot of these circumstances is just to throw out things. I remember distinctly for Life Eater, you hinged on the concept of BDSM, and you were like, spank twice, and I was like, Candace, we're
Very
doing a lot
granular.
of things, but we can't do this.
I was like, it's a kidnapping sim. How can we
Oh,
not be doing
yeah.
this too?
That's not crossing the line at that point. Like, the line's over
Right.
there. Like, don't
Which is
worry
very
about
Exactly.
it.
fair. But yes, it's very funny when I read a Candace list and I'm like, Candace went on a tangent and followed it to its end and then said, okay, I need to stop. It did a hard turn elsewhere.
Yeah, I know that you got another one of those recently on another game that I'm writing on, where it was like, yeah, I got focused on horses for a little while here. I don't know if you want to keep all of those, but
Good to have, like, if you need it. Speaking of
Yeah.
good to have, Judy, you were on background art, and there is some really good art in this game. But like, when were you brought in on the process on
Oh,
Life
thank
Eater?
you. It must have been around, in my mind, like December 2023, I think. Zolivir just DM'd me and he was like, hey, we have this new game. Here's a kidnapping sim. You want to do a few fucked up backgrounds? Well, it was mostly just the one basement background and then the glitchy backgrounds when you're actually playing the game, which are fun because usually, I'm pretty straightforward in my background, so it was nice to come up with some more abstract things. And I remember we would have this back and forth on the narrative with the basement, like we would do this and it was like, hey, can we put some more rusty bloody weapons here? Can we put a cage all the way back against the wall? And then some
I remember
discussions
being very
about
specific about what corner the cage had to be in for like staging reasons.
yeah, and we were talking about the staging for the bloodstains as well. That was really fun.
It
I
was
think we
very
actually
fun doodling
have a few
on-
TikToks about that on the main Strange Scaffold accounts as
There
well.
are. Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah. There's also some really good like little videos of the animations, like just because I was playing it again today, and I was
Yeah,
like,
they're
yeah,
so
I remember
good.
the video of Zalavir doing the movements for the stabbings and the
I
whatnot.
live
So
for Zalavir's animation references.
yeah, they're good.
They are good.
I am so excited for the ones that I'm going to be able to do for El Paso too. I've come up with some really messed up freaks and have some interesting ways that I will work with animators to see if it would be a good way to try to make something move or if it would make our lives awful.
Made
By the
by
way-
freaks for freaks.
Yeah, I was going to say that was said very casually, but and we have announced it kind of low key on things. But yeah, there's an El Paso as well too, and that's happening. So if that blew your mind at that moment with the casual throwing out there, that's not one of the games we haven't announced yet. Interestingly enough, with Life Eater, what were the lessons that were taken from creating that game? What was, I mean, I guess from a production standpoint, but also from a development standpoint, Zalavir, to start with you, like coming out of Life Eater, because the next game we're moving on to is Click Holding, not necessarily informing the other, but like what lessons would you say were taken from that, good and bad?
I think one of the big lessons coming away from that, and that's something that's really been a part of our processes over the last few years, has been when we're defining the box and the collaborators who work on a game, trying to get them in the door sooner, trying to have production have more and more of a voice on what the game is, rather than the kind of Avengers-style Samuel Jackson call-ups I do. There's a appeal to that, and there is a place for it, but it's not the standard, and it shouldn't be. And that was, you can hear in a lot of these stories, that's very much how a lot of this came down. Despite the fact that there was several of these people who we'd worked with before, there could have been more planning in that regard. I think the positive one was really, I had always been fearful of the logistics of voice acting, and the El Paso Elsewhere process meant that voice acting was such a big part. That was what I inherently thought in my brain. But I think Life Eater was the thing that let me give myself permission to consider still voice acting in a high impact format, and that doesn't need to necessarily distort an entire dev timeline or scope of game. And it was because when we were doing initial writing, I think I actually sent you the message, Candace. I was like, Candace, I think we need to bring in voice acting, because this story, I believe in it. I believe in how we're doing it, but it will be read completely different if it's read by people. It will become human if it's read by people. And that later informed a lot of how we've casually put in voice acting or taken out voice acting and other things, depending on how much or how little we wanted something to be interpreted in a human way. Do you remember that, Candace?
Yeah, I mean, another piece that I think was really fun from Life Eater specifically was just that casting process. I found to be a lot of fun, because it was like a call on social media, and I think we got, God, I think it was like 300 submissions.
Yo,
Yeah, it was
I didn't
not
realize it was that many.
it was a lot of people very quickly. And Zalabir and I had like a 3-hour call where we just like listened to like, okay, yep, this is the direction we're going. Nope, yep, maybe, no. And like all the way, and like made a huge database of all these different folks who had submitted. And we've pulled from that database since then too, for projects like I Am Your Beast, where it was like, okay, this person doesn't make any sense as the lead
Ralph.
in. I couldn't remember if we said his name or not.
That's the thing, I was gonna say, I don't know as it's actually in the game, but
Because it's
there is
distorted.
a name. Yeah, that's always been kind of a secret that we've never fully thrown out there, by the way. Like,
Have we
We've
not
never
ever said it
I
out
don't think
loud?
so.
I don't think we've
I-
ever
I-
canonically admitted to Ralph.
No, I think you
Yeah.
maybe said it once offhandedly in Discord in a way that I noticed and a couple other people noticed, of like, oh, he's never actually said that before. But it just went
Okay.
by, and it was like, oh, it's fine. Nobody cared.
I think what we should do is
they didn't
all
notice.
say, we should all say Ralph more often, so that Chris has to like glitchy censor us every single time we do it.
God, yeah, if that's the way we want to go, you'll never know.
Absolutely.
That-
But yeah, we had lots of folks submit for Ralph that weren't a fit at all, but were really solid actors that we ended up pulling on for I Am Your Beast, where it was like, hey, do you want to get exploded by bees? And they were like, yeah.
Yeah, do you want to be the guy that won't piss? Yeah, let's go. Well, I want to move on because we have a lot of games, and the next game we're going to talk about is Click Holding.